If you're not sure where to start with Slovenia's NIS2 information security law, then this video is for you. I'll explain you how these information security law and other documents are structured, what are the most important requirements for companies that need to comply with NIS2, and I'll also show you a couple of templates that you can use to comply with this NIS2 legislation in Slovenia. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea on what the main requirements are and what are the steps that you have to take. Okay, let's start with the basics. So Slovenia has published information security law in May 2025, and for simplicity I'll call this NIS2 law in Slovenia, but it actually did not publish any implementing regulations regarding this law, unlike other European countries that have already published their laws and then some implementing regulations. However, Slovenia's government office for information security did publish a couple of recommendations that I'll show you, which go into a little bit more details when it comes to cybersecurity and training and these kind of things. And by the way, below this video you'll find a link to an official site where you can download all of these documents that I'll be mentioning. Now, similarly to other European countries, Slovenia NIS2 law specifies things like, which companies need to comply, requirements for national cybersecurity strategy, which government authorities exist and what is their role, how does the supervision work with regards to these companies that are in NIS2 scope, what are the fines and other penalties, and unlike other cybersecurity laws in other European countries, Slovenian NIS2 law actually specifies cybersecurity measures in a bit more detail than these other countries. Or to be more precise, some definitions are rather generic, whereas some others go into much more detail. And this is what I'll show you in a minute in this video. It is also worth mentioning here that the European Commission has published this Commission Implementing Regulation 2024-2690, and this Commission Implementing Regulation, or CIR, is actually valid in all European Union countries, including Slovenia. And the purpose of this CIR is to specify detailed security requirements for digital companies. Now, since it is focused only on digital companies, it is not valid for all companies that come in the NIS2 scope, and NIS2 directive as well as Slovenian NIS2 law actually specifies 18 sectors, and out of these 18 sectors, these digital companies are covered in 3 sectors. So what does this mean? If your company operates in Slovenia, and if it belongs to any of these 3 sectors, then it has to comply with both CIR 2024-2690 and with the Slovenian NIS2 law. However, if your company belongs to these 15 sectors that are not digital companies, then your company has to comply only with the Slovenian NIS2 law. And if you want to learn more about this Commission Implementing Regulation, you can take a look at my other video where I go into more depth about this CIR. Okay, let me now show you a couple of key requirements that are relevant for companies in NIS2 scope from this NIS2 law in Slovenia. So on the left hand side you can see this original text of the Slovenian NIS2 law, and on the right hand side this is the automatic AI translation from this law. It's pretty good, actually. It translates pretty well. So let's actually browse through and see what is the content of this law. Actually, let me jump to this article number 6 which speaks about which companies need to comply, and basically there are no surprises here. This is the same as in NIS2 directive, so everything that is written there is also here in this NIS2 law. Let me see further. Then in this section 7 you have actually the explanation of the differences between essential and important entities. Again, the same criteria as in NIS2 law. Okay, let's go for the next one. This is about risk management measures. As you can see, the whole chapter is around this risk management, and the first is article 20 about management. And as you can see here in these paragraphs 3 and 4 and so on, you have these requirements for training and education. And so this is for senior management, this is for all the other employees. And by the way, I have a separate video which speaks about how to organize this kind of NIS2 training, so you can take a look at this video to learn more. Yeah, let's go further. Here in article 21 you can actually see that it specifies what are the mandatory documents that you must have. And as you noticed in this English version, this is marked in red, so this is something that actually goes on top of NIS2 directive and this CIR 2690. Actually, none of these documents specify the mandatory documentation, whereas Slovenian law does specify this. So as you can see, there are several things that you need to have according to NIS2 law. Another thing here in this paragraph 2 is this requirement that the entities need to define what is their scope for business continuity for protection based on the business impact analysis. So this is also something that is not covered in CIR or NIS2 directive. This is also something that is extra, and you will now actually start seeing these things that are part of this NIS2 law, where actually this NIS2 law gets into more detail. So as I mentioned before, in most cases this law is general, but for some things it actually gets into detail, and this is one of these details that you can see here. Okay, let's see some other things. Article 22 is about these risk management measures. As you can see, most of these measures are rather generic here, so in this paragraph 2. And again, there is one part of this item 1 here that you actually need to include these information security in business plans and annual work program. Again, this is something that is extra on top of CIR and NIS2 directive. Okay, let's see further. There is one requirement here in this paragraph 8, which says that you cannot actually use systems where actually actively exploited vulnerabilities exist. So this is also something that doesn't exist in NIS2 directive and CIR. Also one requirement that is extra here in paragraph 9. Let's see some others. Background checks. This is also an interesting one. So basically it says that entities need to actually check the background of employees and so on. And in paragraph 3 it says that basically they are not allowed to work if this check was not done properly. Again, this is something that is extra. It doesn't exist in NIS2 or CIR. Let's see further. There are very detailed requirements for logs. So as you can see them here in this paragraph 2, all of these items are required when you handle logs, and you need to keep them at least for 6 months. You also have to keep these logs within the territory of Republic of Slovenia, and then there are some different requirements for digital infrastructure companies. Okay, let's go further. In this article 25, there are some specifications on assessment and self-assessment. As you can see, the essential entities must perform this compliance assessment every 2 years, whereas important entities must apply self-assessment at least once every 2 years. So basically these are the requirements here. And this is where this interesting part stops. Now let's see some other things that I found. So working hours. Now this is not directly relevant for companies that need to comply with, but I kind of found it very interesting because here actually you have this requirement that government bodies have also to work, outside of regular working hours, and here you actually have very clear specifications. So again, something that is interesting to see. I didn't actually see this in any other laws in any other country. Okay, supervision. There is a very detailed description on how government bodies supervise these essential and important entities. Lots of things here, so I'm not going to go through this. There are also specification about the fines. So as you can see here, it's up to 10 million euro for essential entities, exactly the same as in NIS2 directive. But also there are fines for people that are in charge of these companies. So for physical persons who are in charge of these companies, they also have to pay these fines if the company is found non-compliant. Okay, similar thing for important entities here. And let's go and see these sectors. So as you can see here in this Annex 1, you see these 18 sectors. So energy, transportation, banking, financial markets, health, drinking water, wastewater. And here you see this first of these 3 digital companies. So this is about digital infrastructure. And then the second is ICT service management. So basically these are also digital companies. And when we scroll down, you see this Annex number 2. These are other critical sectors. And as you can see here, also these digital providers. So this is the third out of these 3 sectors that are covered by the CIR, the Commission Implementing Regulation. And then also at the end, you have some specification in this Annex 3, what kind of public administration entities also need to comply with this NIS2 law. Okay, let's go for these other documents. So this one is published by this Ministry of Digital Transformation. As you can see, it's published before the law in April 2024. And basically this one is relevant only for this operator of the Central Information and Communication System. So it's not relevant for any other company that is in NIS2 scope. And as you can see here, you have several requirements regarding security. But let's go for something that is more relevant. So this one is published by this Office of Information information security, and this recommendation was also published before the information security law, but it does actually refer to the old version of the information security law from 2018. And here you can actually see that it requires companies to perform a risk analysis. Also, it specifies the minimum security requirements, and it also specifies how information security incidents need to be managed. And then when you scroll down, you actually see in more detail each of these requirements. Risk assessment here, then actually it's quite a lot of text here. So the next one is about managing information security incidents, and finally you have these minimum security measures. So in any case, this is a recommendation. It's not an implementing regulation, but it still does specify more detail. And interestingly enough, they also mentioned ISO 27001 here. Okay, and then let's go for the third document. This one is published also by Office of Information Security, and this one says, it didn't actually translate here, but this is about recommendations for information security training. And when we scroll down, you can actually see that here you have a reference to this latest version of information security law, or NIS2 law. And actually here it specifies what are the, let's say, forms on how to actually deliver this kind of training. And then section number 2 speaks about what is the, let's say, suggested content for this kind of information security training. So online scams, malware, passwords and access, device and network security, this kind of thing. So basically this is something that they recommend here. Okay, and now I'll show you how to write a couple of documents to cover these requirements, and also how to reduce your effort when you go for this compliance process. Okay, I'm showing you now this security policy for human resources. This is the template from Advisera NIS2 documentation toolkit. On the left hand side you see the Slovenian version, and on the right hand side you see actually exactly the same document in English. When you scroll down, you will see the table of contents. So let me show you this. So basically here you have some principles, then the background checks, and actually I'll show you this. If you remember from the NIS2 law, there is a specific requirement for background checks, and I'll show you how this looks like in a document. Then you have how you specify these security aspects in agreements, raising security awareness, training, a disciplinary process of termination. So basically you cover the whole human resources cycle in this kind of a document. Let's see the reference documents. Here you have the reference to this NIS2 law, or information security law in Slovenia, NIS2 directive, also this Commission implementing regulation 2690, and then several clauses and controls from ISO 27001. And I'll come back to why all these documents are important and actually how you build a document based upon them. But first let me show you this section 3.2, which speaks about how you actually check the background of candidates. So again, there are several items here that are listed based on NIS2 law, but also on some other sources. And here is this also last sentence. Basically it says that if the candidate does not give consent for the background check, then he or she cannot actually be allowed to work for this company. And this is taken directly from the NIS2 law. And this actually brings me to the point of what is the best way actually to write documents. I can explain you how we do it in Advisera. So we have this three-step process. First, we actually write the documents based on international standards like ISO 27001, ISO 27002. And then in the second step, we adapt these documents according to this Commission implementing regulation 2690. And then in the third step, we adapt them to local laws and regulations. So in this case, this is the Slovenian NIS2 law. And basically what we found out is that when we follow this kind of three-step process, first, it's easier actually to write these kind of documents. Second, this is how we make sure that we don't miss anything that is important. Of course, you don't have to follow this process. You can follow some other process, but from our experience, this is the one that works best. And of course, if you want to reduce this effort of writing documents, you can use this and other documents from Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit. And there is also another video where I explain how you can use this toolkit, so basically to see it in action. Okay, let's see a document that is more IT oriented. So this is the logging and monitoring procedure. So let's see here the table of contents. What are the information security requirements? What must be logged? Mechanisms, protection, and so on. So basically, again, the whole cycle of logging and reviewing of these logs is explained. Let's see the reference documents. So again, we have the information security law, we have this CIR 2690, and we have 27001. There is no reference to NIS2 directive because actually the directive doesn't mention anything on logging. And when we actually go for this section 3.2, here we have actually several things that need to be logged. And when you compare actually these things, you will notice that everything from the Slovenian NIS2 law is actually covered here. Okay, let me also show you this policy on information system security. So let's see the table of contents. And by the way, this is a top level policy, so it doesn't really go into detail of, let's say, access control or handling vulnerabilities. It deals with some general things like, setting cybersecurity objectives, measurement of the fulfillment, these kind of things, including these general responsibilities. And I'll specifically actually show you this 4.5 about controlling cybersecurity, but let me first show you the reference documents. So here you can actually see the information security law, NIS2 directive, the CIR, also ISO 27001 clause 5.2. But let me now show this one specific point around how actually this cybersecurity is controlled. So this is 4.5, and basically it says here that the company needs to perform this internal audit and this management review. And this internal audit is basically this self-assessment that is required by the NIS2 law. So through this internal audit, actually the company performs this self-assessment, and this is actually how this document is adapted for NIS2 law. Of course, there is a separate internal audit procedure which specifies in detail how this internal audit is being performed. Okay, hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions around NIS2 law in Slovenia, and I'll answer you as quick as I can. And to access these documents from Slovenian NIS2 documentation toolkit that I was showing you, click the link in the description below, and this will enable you to open a free demo account for this NIS2 documentation toolkit, and you'll be also able to download free demo documents from this toolkit. And see also my next video which shows how to use this NIS2 documentation toolkit. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos about cybersecurity, compliance and governance every week. Thanks for watching!